Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Jason, and here I talk about all things story. The story I'm talking about today is episode 47 of my ongoing series, Worth 1,000 Words, where I write a 1,000 word short story based on a piece of artwork. And this week's story is a little bit of a darker take. I know, surprise, big surprise, right? Me writing something in the dark territory. But again, alas, I have ventured into the darkness. And this story actually, for me, had some unexpected surprises, some happy accidents, you could argue, a learning experience. I will talk more in detail about that in the writing analysis if you're interested in that, and probably a little bit at the outro, but I haven't gotten there yet in the recording. But with a dark piece of artwork like this, I had to find some dark music, and so I went into uncharted territory and looked for something I'd never listened to ever, an artist I've never heard of. And I found, hang on, let me read it. Desideri Marginis. I don't know. It's Latin. It might be Latin. It might not be. It sounds like Latin. But the album is called Departed, and it was a very atmospheric piece, very similar to something like Lusmord might create, just these really low droning tones. And I think it really, really helped me just get in the visual space of where this character was, because, oh, what a place he finds himself in. So without further ado, let's check out this week's artwork. This week's artwork is titled Thoughts, and it is by a freelance illustrator named Valera Ludfulina from St. Petersburg, Russia. I've actually had this one bookmarked from some time, but I forgot about it, and I was perusing my bookmarks to find a piece of artwork because the ones that were trending on ArtStation didn't really inspire me at the time. And I think probably why I hadn't attempted this one until now is that it was somewhat overwhelming. I mean, let's take a closer look here. We have a shirtless man sitting on a chair, and he's gripping the edge of it. He's kind of sitting in a strange way, as if he's very uncomfortable. And if the the objects behind him, the characters behind him, are an indication of why he'd been comfortable, I can see why. So on the right side, we have all of these women, but they're women, but they're not women. They're faceless. They're kind of connected, interconnected. There appears to be a massive wagon wheel or something of some sort on the far right, and it looks like they're holding out a sword to him, a great sword. Next to that, we have a severed pig's head on a pillow with a bunch of keys dangling beneath it. Further to the left, we have a cloaked figure with a massive, massive face of tentacles, I would imagine. And that creature's hand is on another creature standing tall with forearms, two of which are on its chest, and it's holding a scythe-like weapon in one hand, and the other hand is under the chin of this man, and the face is split into, revealing a skull. And other than that, we have a strange little dog creature with a bunch of eyes as well. But other than that, we have just a massive array of characters in the background. It almost looks like a battle. You have all these pole arms or poles of some kind stretching up. It almost reminds me if they're on a ship or something, but I have no idea. Anyway, I'm sure you can imagine how this could create an interesting tale. Valera, thank you for this very inspiring piece of artwork. It's going to be a challenge for me to make sense of this, but I very much appreciate the aesthetic and the implications that this may have. So with that said, let's see what I came up with. These thoughts, they whisper from a room with no light, asking to see. A finger responds, flipping a switch. That finger straightens, as does his body, pale and lean, yet to go to where the whispers asked. These thoughts, always asking. 2 paces, 3, 4, and he's there, shoes crossing the barrier, dull and black. His hand extends, and the finger is curled no longer, straight, a vector to take him where the thoughts demand. These thoughts, always demanding. The chair doesn't feel right, rickety, back leg lifting and lowering, foreleg wounded and bandaged. He tries to compensate for that flaw. It leads him to an awkward position with left leg extended, right leg bent, and hands gripping the edge of the seat to keep him upright. He is lost in the distance as these thoughts speak. These thoughts, always speaking. Arms and hands, praying, begging, searching behind him. He can feel them disturb the air. They never speak. They can't. Mouthless. Other things they can't do either, but what they can, they do well. They offer. These thoughts, always offering. A blade 4 hands must hold, an answer, a clue, a symbol. They speak in these things, and one chooses to speak in touch, nearly. She wants to, on the leg that counterbalances the chair, but she doesn't. She knows the rules. If only she'd break them. These thoughts, always obeying. He loses balance and the rear chair leg hammers the floor. The faceless women scatter, taking their offering with them only to return moments later as if they had never left. The smell of flesh, of blood, of brass. Eyes that once saw but now are blind. A mouth that could never speak bleeds. Bodiless, it rests upon a stool of keys, singing like wind chimes on a breeze that cannot be felt. He sweats, wishing he could feel. These thoughts, always denying. The chair rights itself from the help of another. Chills creep down his spine. He swallows. The smell of the earth, of the sea, of the grave. This one tastes the breeze he cannot feel. The heat he can. It stops the hand of another, the one of 2 faces, one inside the other. 4 hands she has, the split-faced one, 2 crossed on her breast, one directly under his chin to lift it so the blade she holds can do its work. If not for the other, it might have. He wishes it would. These thoughts, never killing. More weight in the distance, so many more, wave after wave, a battle all for him. Which one will bring him what he needs? What does he need? Everything blends, directionless. He is no longer the center. The light is no longer the beacon. Wings scatter to the wind, to the storm that will not destroy. Endless shoulders hold endless poles, meeting to a center that is him but not quite. In this bedlam they harmonize, making a center for him. Those who can speak with their voices, those who can feel with their hands, those who can kill with their blades. These thoughts, never. He sees it in the eyes of the pig, feels it in the touch of the faceless woman who can't, smells it in the one made of worms, hears it in the blade to kill him, and he stands to face them. He grabs the sword with 2 hands, and it is enough. These thoughts, never controlling. He cuts these women down who now have faces, mouths to speak. They tell him he is handsome, he is perfect, he is disgusting, he is forgotten. Each of them he leaves headless because he wants to see their faces, not to see them retract where he cannot go, only to come again. These thoughts, never leaving. He kicks the sword to where the women would have fled if they'd been able, and reaches into the entrails of brass and secrets. The pig stares at him, bubbling awful things in the voice of his brother, who left him in this place with the way out but no way out. He finds it, the way out, grasps it, and it fits in the grooves of his closed hand, unlocking the door. These thoughts, never winning. He faces the thing made of worms, hand still on that arm that wishes to torment more than kill. He finds his finger curled again, a hook, nail sharper than the great blade he left behind. And he reaches into that writhing mass of worms that is a face, that is a voice, telling him he is a coward, that he is no son, that he should go inside with those soft hands and weak stomach, because this is a man's work, and he's not a man. He hooks an open mouth deep inside, and he pulls. His fingernail holds steady on the ridges of a mouth's roof, loses it briefly, but the teeth are enough, and they aren't brave enough to bite down. These thoughts, never speaking. Four hands are occupied with fear, not blade or torment, backing into the waves of others who have fled into the storm. The hair of this thing parted down its face, hugging the parts that might have been beautiful once to expose something that is not. The blade it once held he holds now, as hooked as the finger that had ended the plague of worms who spoke in the voice of his father. This one is simple because it does not object. It drops to its knees, tangled in its robes of horror, and he splits its head once more. For a moment it weeps that a son does not betray a mother, that a man is a man, like his father, like his brother, but he cuts her down again. These thoughts, never understanding. He is alone, with only an empty room and a chair. He breaks the chair. He turns off the light. He closes the door, and he never returns. This story and this experience reminded me that no matter how bad you think something is or how lost you may feel, your subconscious will generally lead you to where you need to go. So I will explain a little bit about what that means. So the first half of the story, I had no idea where I was going with this. What I was doing is essentially putting this man in this location and introducing all of the characters you see around him. First, he was by himself. He was drawn into this room, as you can see. These thoughts, they whispered from a room with no light, asking for a light. And then a finger responded. He flipped on the light switch and entered this circle of light to sit uncomfortably on this chair, which I love the detail of it. It has this bandaged leg in the front, and he's kind of gripping it as if, it's not quite even, right? It's an uneven thing. So he's got to sit strangely to keep things level. And he's staring off into the distance, clearly thinking. I mean, the title of this is called Thoughts. And as beautiful as this imagery is, I love so much about it. I love that it's Lovecraftian. I'm a massive Lovecraft fan. I love the symbolism, the potential symbolism. And it's vague enough, honestly, to allow you to come to your own conclusions. And that's what I like most about it. There's nothing really that directly leads you, or at least led me to understand what the artist was trying to convey. There's, these women kind of offering a sword. There's a pig's head on a pillow with some keys. There's this tentacle face thing. There's a woman or a man, I guess, I don't know, with a split face. But what I decided to do is take this little mantra, these thoughts, always demanding, these thoughts, always speaking, as you see right now, and use that as a mantra to repeat throughout the story. And I kind of repetition for me is a great tool. I mean, you may think that this was a little bit too much, but if you pay close attention, there's a turning point, right? Now I don't remember if it's directly at the midpoint of this thing or what's going on, but I start with always, 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 and then never, 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 never. And that's kind of when the story turns and he becomes in control. He's no longer a slave to these thoughts. And that is the precise moment where I knew where I was going with the story. So all of this stuff you're reading right now that I'm typing out, I had no idea. I was just trying to paint the picture that you see before you with words to the best of my ability. And hopefully, and hoping that something was going to come out of it. Something was going to hit me. And thankfully it did. And I was, I was pretty ecstatic that I made sense of this thing. I was worried that I was just going to describe this picture exactly as you see it and leave it at that, and maybe just kind of leave these thoughts ambiguous. Clearly they're horrific. So he's either crazy or these are representations of something that are some things that are bothering him, that are sticking with him, that are tormenting him. So that's what I went with. Strangely enough, Now, I will tell you what came to my mind. I think that the outcome or where the story turns is ambiguous enough to where you can come to your own conclusions. And as I've said many, many times, that's one thing I love most about fiction is that even if you don't know the author's intentions, coming up with your own meaning is just as valid, I think, because story is something that we all share, that we all experience in different ways. That's the power of it, right? I think one reason I like to write is that hopefully people will read my work and that will drive them to do something or think about something in a different way, because I know a lot of people think reading fiction is a waste of time. They think it's purely entertainment. They think it's artsy fartsy. They think there's really no utility to it. But my response is that while there's no direct utility in terms of, it's not a scientific achievement or it's not, an invention of some kind. It's not, making the world a better place. I think that the power of fiction lies in that you can inspire other people who are perhaps in those roles. You may trigger a sequence of thoughts that might lead them to somewhere. It might just be as simple as emotional pleasure, catharsis. It might make them reflect on something about their life. I don't know, but I'll stop ranting about it and tell you exactly what I was thinking when I switched over to the mantras being never, and when our character he became in control. And that is, he was just struggling with the fact that he was gay. All of these terrible, terrible thoughts are representations of people throughout his life who have tormented him. They have shunned him. He like like many gay people, I can imagine, they go throughout their life trying to be somebody else because they're worried about being accepted. And so the symbols on the right are all the women that he tried to have relationships with, perhaps, or tried to have relationships with him and he denied them, or, it just didn't work out because he's not into women. The pig represents, I don't know, it's kind of strange, but as you know, because you've heard the story, is it's his brother, right? His brother locked him in this room. Maybe there was I guess a pig's head. Maybe there was a feast of some kind of image that frightened him, and he was, locked in this room with this object, and that just stuck with him. That was another horrific event of, the feeling of being trapped. And I know it doesn't relate directly to what I'm talking about, but I think that's an element. And then finally, I don't know why I thought about this, but dads, they always seem to like to fish. At least my dad likes to fish. And so the face of this thing of tentacles, it looks like a bunch of worms. And so I was imagining, I just attributed that to bait, and that's kind of what I was hinting at, is that, this father was taking this kid off to do a, quote unquote manly thing, fishing. I don't know that fishing is manly, but that's where it led me. And he couldn't take it, right? He was too sensitive. He didn't want to put the bait on the hook. He didn't want to do this, and so his father shunned him. And it's not like he's directly ridiculing his son for, being gay, but it's that deeper seated masculinity, I think. And then finally, his mother on the left. However, I don't know if that's a woman or a man. It's kind of hard to tell. I feel like the faces on the left and right seem more feminine to me, so I chose a woman. And it's wearing a gown of some kind, but I guess you could argue it's a robe. I chose that to be his mother. As far as what her role was in this, she was very disappointed in him. And I think that's sort of the entire theme of the story, is disappointment of who their son turned out to be, or did not become what they wished him to become. And so that is what hit me when I started the Nevers. I wanted him to kind of be empowered to. I just imagined him coming to this room often. I don't know why shirtless. Maybe it's just sort of like a metaphor for being exposed, but he came into this room to just, I don't know, think about these things, these strange thoughts that torment him all the time, and try to face them, even though it seems like he might have an opportunity to stay away from this location. And there's actually some other paintings. I don't know if it's sort of like alternative versions or versions that like progress, but there is one painting. If you check out Valera's ArtStation page, you'll see that there is a painting of him just sitting alone in this room, and where all the characters are now. it's all blackness, and so he's sitting in this pool of light. Yeah, I think that's where I was going with it, and I want him to get this sword and sort of like, face his fears, face his demons, so to speak. I mean, they do look like literal demons, and conquer them all, and then never to return to this room again. So I'm not sure if you got that. I think it, like I said, I think it was loose enough. I think it was ambiguous enough, possibly for you to apply any kind of story of acceptance or unacceptance to this character. And I'm not sure what triggered it. I'm not sure if it was the mantra. I was using those as almost like spots to catch my breath, so to speak, my writing breath, and use those as maybe ways, repetition to hopefully give me an idea of where to go. And most of them, if not all of them, echo the last line of the preceding paragraph. And I don't know, it's kind of funny, but it's just like a way to catch a breather, a way to create a tempo, and then hopefully discover what's going to happen next. And thankfully it worked. I don't know if that worked particularly. I'm not sure why it took me so long, but essentially, while I was writing the story and just describing what you see before you, it was a way for my, I guess it was biding some time for my subconscious to come up with something. And I was very, very afraid that I wasn't going to come up with something. It took me some time to come to the realization of where the story was going to go, how it was going to end. And thankfully it got there. I was fully prepared to just get to 1,000, and it was going to be kind of a, I don't know, a story that sort of went nowhere. And I'm sure I'll have one of those. I feel like there are a few stories I've written that definitely aren't as powerful as they could be. They definitely don't have a lot of the, fundamentals of storytelling enough for my taste to make a compelling, complete story. Especially the last one. I think the battle at the hall of battle at the hall of Pandemon. It was okay. It just felt like it was a loose collection of ideas that I strung together and tried to create a connecting thread. But I think that's a great example of one that I felt sort of to a degree went nowhere. It was okay. It was just very blah, I guess. But what's nice is if you keep at it, right? You keep at it. You keep trying to get these words out, no matter what. You'll find that you will find those at some point, I think. And I think that this experience, particularly with this story, because I've been struggling with my next novel. Really, I've written, I don't know, maybe like 10,000 words of it. I've outlined it twice, I feel like, in different levels of completion, but I haven't fully come to the realization or the conclusion of what I like. I know the sort of the structure of the story, but really the plot is the least that I'm concerned with, at least the last thing. It's more about the character, it's their experiences, it's their interpersonal relationships, and how those things all work together, because those are what make you remember things in a story. And so, but because I feel lost in that, having this experience here where I was definitely lost for 50%, if not more, can't remember the exact point, not knowing where I was going to go, and I just kept going and kept going and kept going. It finally came to me. However, I do believe that these are much easier because I know I only have to hit 1,000 words, whereas a novel, there's no like upper limit word count. I usually have an idea of where I want to go word count wise, but there's no limit. And so it can be a little bit more daunting. There's a lot more characters to balance, a lot more plot pieces. But again, I think, I can take this principle that I've learned, and hopefully when the going gets tough on my longer form stuff, that I can remember this story, and hopefully it will lead me, or push me on to finish it and keep going and keep going and keep going, because it always works itself out. It seems to, anyway. And even if I come back and read that novel later and hate it, that's okay, because at least I got it done. At least I know I've gotten better. So here we are, standing at 1,000 words, doing a little bit of tweaking. Editing wasn't too bad, and we're about to end it right now. Welcome to the end, dear viewer. I'm so glad you made it. So very glad, because there was a learning experience here. This is the part of the video, my final thoughts, where I talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, and maybe something I learned. And I did learn something. So let's talk about that really quick. I learned that never give up. I know that sounds stupid. It sounds cliche, but it's true, because if you listen to the writing analysis, and if you did not, I highly encourage you to do so, because I really break this down in a lot more detail. But for a good 50%, if not more of the story, I had absolutely no idea where I was going. And normally, by the time I get there, by the time I try to turn the story, turn the tale, I know where the ending is going. The ending is in sight. Sometimes I have an idea where the ending is going to be right at the beginning, and I sort of seed it by the first line all the way to the last line. However, in this one, I did not, but I was fully expecting to just get to the end of the story, have it essentially be a collection of visuals with nothing more, no subtext, no meaning, nothing at all like that. But it didn't end up that way. I was able to construct something here. While I read it over for the narration, I did find some holes and some things that can probably clear up quite a bit, which will happen in the rewrite for publication. But I feel like it's there enough, and I like that I wasn't completely literal to anything. I'm not sure that you can be completely literal at all with something like this, because clearly this man is dreaming, he's thinking, he's tormented by these things, and these entities are just really haunting him, and pulling meaning from that was difficult. Because as much as I love the imagery, they're so abstract, which actually became quite freeing because I could pull meaning without it feeling like it needed to be directly tied to what you were looking at. I did, however, use visual cues from those images to concoct a story. I feel like the mother story maybe is the weakest one, possibly, because there really isn't any inherent imagery about this woman being his mother, or why she was disappointed in him. But I think that's okay. Maybe I should have done something with a dog, that the dog with the many eyes. That was pretty cool. So I think that's probably something I didn't like. Maybe I can use these creatures, this imagery, to hone in a little bit more on what they mean exactly. And what I did like is that I was able to turn the story around, thankfully. I like the little repetition of mantras. I've done that before, but it began with always, 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 and then once the story turned and he was able to take control of his own narrative, so to speak, everything switched over to never, never, never. And so that was a great cue, I feel like. Maybe a little bit on the nose. I don't know. You tell me in the comments. But sometimes it just feels like it works. It feels like you have to go that way. And maybe if it doesn't work for everybody, maybe it's going to work for some people. Regardless, it is what it is. The story is done. I will never change the core heart of what these things are, the soul of the story. I'm going to go back and grammatically fix some things and clear some things up, but never will I completely change it, even though I've talked about being interested in doing that for a few particular ones, because upon completion of those stories, I was very much inspired with a much better tale. But I feel like that's breaking a rule of some kind. I feel like that's breaking a promise to myself and sort of what I set out to do with the series. But that is it for me. I will quit ranting at this point. But if you would like to support the channel, give me a like if you like the video. Subscribe if you like story-related content. Send a piece of artwork my way. I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to see what you would like me to write a story to. Those are some of the most fun ones for me. I've had other people do it a handful of times, and it's always been a great experience writing a story from something that I would have never picked on my own, perhaps. But anyway, check out my books, check out my live streams. All the links are down in the description below. And keep reading, keep writing, and I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye. If you'd like to read the story in its non-video format, check the link in the description. I didn't edit anything else, promise. Thanks again.